It was the Penn Center. But the Penn Center is where the first freed slaves came after the South attacked Fort Sumter in 1861. They came there. They didn't believe it. They were free. And you can see the pictures, because it was talking to the first time you see pictures on the faces and the pictures and look on their face. And you say, my God. My God.
Nice to meet you, Brian. You don't know me, but I'm a camera photographer. Bernie. Oh, yeah. Yeah, nice to meet you. You're a camera person? I'm the camera photographer.
And you know that there's something.
My votes are just right now. I'm going to get my tablet. I'm the campaign photographer for Bernie.
You know what? Incredible moment. And I'm here because I'm representing a candidate who's kicking in. I know what it is in San Francisco. We're not going to be there. We're going to work to change, transform this country. That's what it changes. My dad is here to make the world change.
Why are you talking? Because they only can hear you through that.
So we know that the work that you do every single day, you know every
can only hear you.
Do you want me to get up closer?
because you lived here. You felt the pain of it. You saw what happened to our young kids. You know, I just talked to a minister in Flint just now who lost 2 of his sons to gun violence. A minister, 2 of his sons to gun violence. We know that story. We know it. We know what's happening with the prison industrial complex. We know what's happening in mass incarceration. Those are the issues on the table. But we have to direct the issue. We have to push with the push to make those issues at the forefront. And that's what we're able to do with Bernie Sanders. He gives us the best chance to do that, to talk that, to be there, to spend to these communities, to talk in these communities, and to listen to the community. Not only talk, but listen. What do we do? What do we do about education? Now, what do we do about education? How about the Thurgood Marshall education plan that he's introduced? You can look at it. It's a document. You can talk about it. This is what he needs to do. This is what he absolutely needs to do. This is what he needs to do. What about the rebuilding our infrastructure in terms of water? Flint is not the only place. We went to Denmark, South Carolina. And before Denmark comes up, we know that there are thousands of communities around this country who do not have safe water. And that's what I want to see. If I want to spend the next whatever time I have here, I want to be engaged in that conversation. And if you want to be engaged in it, because you can't stop. You can't stop just saying, I'm down here, I'm settled here. You know that we have to fight and continue to fight on. We're here to support the person that we feel gives us the best chance, all of us, to remake this country. And I know that that's what we will have to talk about. That has to be the top of this conversation. That has to be the center of our conversation. This is the play that we have. Mark Twain said that courage is the resistance, resistance to fear. Courage is the management of fear, but not the absence of fear. So we have to get to that. We have to pull ourselves up like under. And we have the energy. We know it. We know we have the energy because we have our mandate and we have the future that belongs to us, but also belongs to the rest of the world and the rest of this generation. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I got it.
Lord, when you hear Sister Nina turn out, hope you can hear some elevator. Hope you can hear some band. Is that right? When we talk about someone who comes out of a tradition, deep tradition. Did you hear Danny Glover? Did you hear Paul Robeson? Did you hear Val Fontaine? Did you hear Canada Lee? Hey, brother, you say what, my brother?
Ozzie Davis and Ruby Dee.
Oh!
Yes.
Isn't that the truth?
I got a picture with her.
And I know I'm in Detroit. of white supremacist slavery and neo-slavery and encountered an industrial order in the Ford plants and became an industrial black working class that constituted the greatest cultural movement in the history of America. That's where Motown came from. That's where Motown came from. That's where Aretha Franklin came from. That's where the Dramatics came from. That's where Robert Charles Adams came from. And Charles Lee Hill came from. The tradition of a struggle of a people in new circumstances but rooted in the best of who they were. And it's up to us to build on that tradition. But it ain't no plaything. This is where it gets very, very serious. That's why we are blues people. We can talk about serious things with a smile.
All right, all right.
Deal with catastrophe with style. All right. B.B. King said, nobody loves me but my mom, and she might be driving too. That's dealing with catastrophe with a style and smile. And in this particular moment, like those moments in the past, it means that we're going to have black people who refuse to be niggerized. That's a serious thing. That's very serious. Because the powers that be, we got a gangster in the White House. We got a fascist Frankenstein in the White House. He's tied to big money in Wall Street. He's tied to big military. And he wants to make sure black people remain niggerized by being walking around scared all the time. They don't want to tell the truth. Scratching when it don't itch, laughing when it ain't funny. Posing and posturing like you got strong spine and really you're still fearful and intimidated. I thank God, my dear brother, I came from Shiloh Baptist Church. We used to say Jesus deniggerized his black people. Makes you free. Speak the truth. Bear witness. Not only for popularity, but integrity, because you're not going to put your grandmama in the grave by slapping her upside the head but putting a smile on her face. Right. Truth, vision, courage, sacrifice. Now, what happens when that encounters the American electoral system? That's what we're dealing with. All right. Because I don't know about you, but most of these politicians I know, they ain't got too much spine. I don't care what color they are, they ain't got too much spine. No, they want to fit in. And they get used to being well-adjusted to injustice. You know what it means to be well-adjusted to injustice?
My.
Thank God, Mark. I'm talking about Marvin Gaye and Malcolm X. They were not well-adjusted to injustice. They cut against the grain. They were mal-adjusted to injustice. Then you raise the question, what politicians do we have who have a longevity of consistency, longevity of integrity, because they refuse to be well-adjusted to injustice? Come on. All these politicians, especially at the national level, these running for president, so tied into Wall Street. Come on. Gangster activity on Wall Street, insider trading, market manipulation, fraudulent activity, predatory lending. How many Wall Street executives went to jail? Zero. Let Jamal Letitia get caught with a crack bag on the corner. Going straight to jail. What does that mean? You got a racist legal system. You got a classist legal system. Oh, but somewhere I read he was she who rendered service to the least of thee. Render service to me. That's my kind of deniggerized Christianity. So we're not going to talk about niggerized Christianity, brother. I won't get into some of these preachers. They turn the blood at the bottom of the cross into Kool-Aid. You just dip in and already gain access to your next commodity, your next thing. Where's your changed life? Where's the fruit that you bear? Where's the sacrifice you're going to make? Where's the truth telling you're going to tell? That's the tradition we talking about. It's not about just an election in one moment. It's how you keep a tradition alive. And it's not just a matter of America. It's the world. If you got presidents dropping drones in Afghanistan and Pakistan and Libya and Somalia and Mali and Niger, and you're killing innocent folk and you're treating Palestinian brothers and sisters under occupation like they less than human, lo and behold, I went to vacation Bible school. And Sarah Ray told me Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. Ethiopian kids, it's true for precious Jewish folk in Tel Aviv, it's true for precious Palestinians in Gaza, true in Hong Kong, true in Canada. Ain't just Detroit, but it starts in Detroit. Because when you end up having black leaders and black politicians who refuse to be niggerized, they end up loving everybody but black people. Oh yeah, you can be highly successful by loving everybody. But when it comes to Jamal and Letitia, lo and behold, you can't say a mumbling word of encouragement. And let's just be honest about this. Let's be honest about this. Because I don't know about you, but I was taught by Irene and Clifton West that my brothers and sisters on the block and in the alley have exactly the same value as the Jack and Jill sisters of the upper middle class. Oh yes. Because we know if the Jack and Jill brothers and sisters of the upper middle class were going to jail at the same level as the precious Jamal and Letitia on the block, we'd have different kind of black leadership. But I don't know about you, but I'm going to hold on to the best of tradition that says we all have equal value. So we're looking for candidates who are looking at the world from the vantage point of those Frantz Fanon called the wretched of the earth.
Come on. Yes, come on, God.
That the first criteria is what you gonna do for those Slash Stone called everyday people.
My.
What you gonna do for those James Cleveland called ordinary people. Don't tell me what you gonna do for your highly professional, educated friends that make all of y'all feel good. You walk around like peacocks. Look at us, look at us. We doing so well. We so rich. We so sophisticated. Walk around like peacocks. I can hear my grandmama saying peacocks strut because they can't fly. Any of these presidents, all these politicians, you got to wear like a loose garment.
Preach, boy.
But what you know, what Sister Nina pointed out, and Daddy pointed out, given the criteria that have been bequeathed to us after 400 years of dealing with this white supremacist nightmare called America. It ain't no white supremacy without predatory capitalism. Nobody tell you there's something called race that's just floating above history. White supremacy was put in place in order to exploit our labor and degrade our bodies and convince us we less than human, so we remain niggerized. Deferring all the time to people. Kowtowing to people. That's what I love about Richard Pryor, Muhammad Ali. That's what we love about Aretha. They were free. How many folks really want to be free, or you just too scared to be free? what happens is, lo and behold,
Well,
here comes this secular Jewish brother from Brooklyn. Call himself a democratic socialist. That already scares a lot of folk in America, doesn't it? Martin Luther King Jr. called himself a democratic socialist. Ella Baker called herself a democratic socialist. Our greatest public intellectual in the whole empire of any color, W.B. Du Bois, called himself a socialist. Malcolm X at the end of his life said, I'm a Muslim, I pray 5 times a day, but I'm working with socialists. Don't let the ism get in the way.
Break it down.
that's right, Doc.
Show no.
Those of us who believe in Jesus.
That's right.
Say that.
I remember when I first met the Black Panther Party right next to Shiloh Baptist Church, I said, I love you, brothers and sisters, like I don't know what, but I'm a Jesus-loving free black man. Jesus loved me. But I also knew some of the preachers I know were scared of Jesus. That's why you never see a picture of Jesus running out the money changers in the temple on the wall of the church. Have you ever seen that on the wall of the church? Jesus running them out, turning over the table, just sitting in the pulpit. No, you got that nice little Italian brother uncle who's looking like he's the uncle of Michelangelo right there on the corner. It's in the Bible, it's in my life. That's why they put him on the cross. He ran the money changers out.
Right.
But no, they niggerized Jesus.
Go on, boy. All right, Cornel.
And I'm going to say this.
And shame the devil.
We ain't got no monopoly on courage. James Baldwin was an agnostic. He had more courage than a whole lot of Christians out there.
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali was a Muslim. The freest black man other than Richard Pryor in the 20th century, alongside Malcolm X, who was a Muslim. We go on and on. Bell Hooks, y'all know the great Bell Hooks. She's Buddhist. She's my sister, I'll take a bullet for her. Muhammad Gandhi was what? Hindu. Don't think just because people talking about Jesus, somehow they got something going on. But those of us who hold on to Jesus say, we hold on to the blood, not the Kool-Aid. That blood will turn you off. Make you so free, cutting your brain. The criteria of any politician is, are they giving priority to poor people and working people?
That's right.
That's the question. Here in Detroit, General Baker.
Come on now.
Here in Detroit, King Cochran, Basely Boggs, James Boggs. Here in Detroit, the League of Revolutionary Black Workers. Here in Detroit, keeping track of those folk catching hell, not because you're anti-rich or anti-middle class, because you're anti-greed, you're anti-avarice, you're anti-indifference, anti-callousness towards folk who are suffering. So here come the Jewish brother from Brooklyn saying, I am a democratic socialist. Let me fuse with Martin Luther King Jr. when it's unpopular and go to jail. I don't need to have cameras when I go to jail. I just want to bear witness. This is very important.
Know the truth.
Because you got so many folk who always want to have the spotlight on when they do something right. See, when my precious gay brothers and lesbian sisters and bisexuals and trans in trouble, I come running in solidarity. How come? Because Jesus said, love ye one another. Love ye one another. Didn't say, just love certain kinds of folk. Didn't say, somehow put a closure on the flow of your love. And justice is what love looks like in public. Any justice that's only justice soon degenerates into something less than justice. You're going to need some love. Coltrane's going to love supreme. He's talking about everybody. No matter what color, Jewish, Arab, laws the way they are. That's the criteria. So when I get into intellectual politics, it ain't a question of somehow just being an advisor to an interesting politician. I don't believe in that mess. I got one life to live. I got a moral and spiritual criteria. And who comes the closest? None of them fully meet the criteria. I'm critical of my dear brother Bernie. I love him to death. I can be critical of him. And when he wins, and I'm going to do everything I can to push him across the line. Oh, yeah. When he wins, I got to be true to my calling. Same thing happened with Obama. I've been working with Obama. He got 4% in the ratings. Many of the folk who loved him to death then wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. I'm working with him every day. But I told that brother from the very beginning, same thing I told Brother Bernie. I come from tradition Martin Luther King Jr., Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, and that's the criteria. And when we push you across the line, if we see you not doing enough for poor people and working people, I'm staying part of the social movement. The social movement that puts pressure on to make sure you don't get caught up. Y'all had that challenge for Coleman Young here in Detroit, didn't you? Oh, I love me some Coleman Young. I love me some Coleman Young. We need to put pressure on that brother. Because the permanent government of every city is big business. It's like the permanent government of every country is Wall Street and corporate elites and Ford Company running things. So the question becomes, what kind of choices you will make based on the criteria you generate. And the three of us have decided that our dear brother Bernie Sanders, focusing on eliminating all the student loans. $15 an hour, just the start. Just the start and going up from there. That's why Wall Street's so nervous. They got $25 trillion of free money, but students can't get an interest-free loan. That's nothing but greed. He tells that truth. And he's honest about it. And most importantly, he doesn't get real nervous when he's under examination and scrutiny. I love my dear sister Harris to death. Ain't no doubt about that. She's AKA sister, hey, AKA sister. Come on, off the phone, you got it going on. But when it comes to the criteria, you ain't gonna be criminalizing the parents of your kids.
All right, sir. All right.
You're not gonna do that. And you're gonna make sure that anytime any of these racist, trigger-happy police put a bullet in one of our precious children, that they gonna have a fair trial and they going to jail. And don't tell me about being tough on crime in order to win the election. We talking about a life, whole host of lives, thousands of lives across the American empire. Sister Harris, I love you. I will protect you and respect you, but also correct you. Sister Elizabeth Warren, strong sister. I respect her. Been a Democrat since 1995. Hey, what were you doing before that? Reagan was doing us in. Where was your voice then? Your favorite president is Theodore Roosevelt, dead up imperialist, white supremacist to the core. Well, not that part. You can't separate those kind of things. You got American version of Hitler and Mussolini in the White House. Hitler and Mussolini made the trains run on time. They had low employment. They had low crime. They still made stuff. We go right down the line. Brother Pete, love Brother Pete. courage. And he's a young brother. So he hadn't had a lot of time to be tested. So I love the brother. But in terms of the criteria that I'm talking about, somebody said, he just not ready yet. He's not ready yet. Y'all had a genius at our Hartford Memorial Church named Anita Baker. Is that right? You know, she's one of the queens. Aretha's the queen. She's one of them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Beyonce, another queen bee. None of them Aretha. But we love all of them. He had just started. Well, she really took off. You bring me joy. Oh, I need to keep cultivating. Keep working. You gonna be the emergent one. We don't know where peace gonna go. 2020. Get ready.
Get ready.
Y'all so kind of getting hot in here and I'm going on too long. But the crucial thing is we have got to get fortified.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And I'm not just talking about being woke. We got a lot of young folk.
Yes, sir.
Beautiful young folk. Marvelous militant young folk. But they talk about being woke all the time. But no, this ain't about being woke. You're going to suffer from insomnia if you don't get no sleep. You got to get fortified. Know when to sleep. Know when to nap. Know when to fight. Know when to laugh. Know when to move back. Sometimes you do the rope-a-dope if too much is coming at you. Till they get tired, then you move. Get your timing together. You a blues people. You a jazz people. You ain't living on the note. You living under the note, on top of the note, flattening that note out in order to keep some love flowing. That's the best of black people. That's a gift to this empire and the whole world. People wonder, how could we go through so much trauma and produce so much healing, so much terror, produce so much freedom, so much hatred, and still teach the world how to love? That's the best of black people. When you think about your grandparents before you even get to John Coltrane or Billie Holiday. But we are losing that tradition. See, the brother got Red Fox. Another free black man. But in those days, black people loved and laughed with each other, not at each other. When you love at black people, you can be successful, but you'll never be great. More money, bigger mansion, maybe a trophy spouse, but you'll never be great. And maybe you never understand the joy that comes out of the struggle. You go in there with the ephemeral pleasures of titillation and stimulation, but you'll never understand the joy that Granddaddy was singing about. You never understand the joy in Donny Hathaway's life. You never understand the joy in the intimate voice of a David Ruffin from Wyandotte, Mississippi. You never understand the joy of Ron Banks. And the dramatics. That's the tradition we're trying to keep alive. So yes, we're here to support Bernie. Yes, we're here to provide critical support. But the most important thing is, wherever you come down, you're going to have to refortify yourself for this struggle, given the imperial decline and cultural decay of this empire in which democracy is running out of gas. And historically, it has been disproportionately black people who have constituted the democratic leaven in the loaf. And when we run out of gas, the whole nation runs out of gas. It's true. We run out of love and justice, the whole nation runs out of love and justice. We run out of courage and vision, the whole nation just well adjusted to injustice and well adapted to indifference. Thank God Detroit still got you all to bear witness. And that's why we blessed here to have.
Dr. West, let's give it up for our amazing team up here.
I want to talk to him first. I want to talk to him. And hold on one second. We're at a local senior home here in Detroit. Danny Glover spoke, as did Nina Turner and Cornel West. Cornel West was, whew, that man is fire. So I'm going to try to get a few words with him in a minute. And people here liked it. I think Ty behind the camera loved it. And they were talking about why Brother Bernie, in Cornel West's words, is the original, the OG, who's been fighting for issues important to the black community here and the low-income community for 40 years. In Cornel West's words, when Elizabeth Warren was a Republican, when Pete Buttigieg was just learning to walk, and all that. So you see Cornel over there getting a lot of hugs. I don't know where Miss Turner went. She might be in the back. But I'm going to try to get Dr. West real quick. Woo. Yeah, walk to the back. I'm going to scoot to the back. Try to get some folks. Bear with us, bear with us. Hold on, folks. Sorry, can I just get around there? How you doing? So we got Danny Glover coming out. Hopefully we could ask him a question or two. We had to jump a couple walls to get back here. We do it for you, the people. Sign up as a member, statuscoup.com/join. We're the only media I see here. Only news media out here for sure. Woo.
I am so sorry.
Sorry about that. Go ahead. And what you see here, this is a senior's home. Obviously, African American vote is important, but so is the seniors' vote for Bernie Sanders. He didn't do as well among older voters last time, particularly older voters of color. Oh, they're going out that way? All right, well, I guess we'll just have to interview some folks. Let's see if we can line up, get some people here. Sir, you got a minute? Just wanted to ask you, what'd you think of the event? It looked like fire.
It was marvelous.
Marvelous?
It was marvelous.
What are you a Bernie supporter or more just was interested in seeing them?
Well, I'm with Elizabeth Warren.
Oh, you're with Warren? Okay. What'd you think was the highlight of what Dr. West said at the end?
I think that we should all stick together and pay attention to what he said about don't be niggerized. You be niggerized, you're going to be in trouble.
Why do you think Warren will be better for black people than Bernie?
I think she's got more experience.
He's been in the Senate much longer than her. And he was a mayor of a town, a city.
He's got that more experience. I think she's better equipped to deal with Trump.
Thank you, sir. All right. So that's one for Warren. He said more experience, which is odd, because Bernie's got more experience. Let's see. Yeah. But he said something else that I don't want to repeat because I'm a white dude, but it was pretty good. Hey, ma'am, what'd you think?
I thought it was wonderful.
You know, Cornel was like really bringing down the house, talking about basically don't listen to what politicians say, look at what they do. What were your thoughts on what he was saying?
Oh, he was right on point. That's what we all should do, listen to what they say. Listen to Donald Trump. He said he got away with what he did because we are what? Okay? So now we're going to take a lesson from a page from his book, and we're going to win this election.
Was anything said today that brings you over to the Bernie side, or are you still thinking about it?
I'm still thinking about it.
Okay.
But everyone was wonderful.
Great. Have a good day. You too. So, hey there. How you doing? Come on over.
I love your show. I love it.
Oh, come on over. You got the Bernie show? Wait a second. Good. Nice to see you. What'd you think? We came in when Danny Glover was speaking. I'm sure Nina brought down the house too. But it seems to me that they were really speaking to enough with like people could say whatever they want. Look at what Bernie has done over the years.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of they all brought it to church. A lot of testimony. Very much speaking to the truth of what he's been doing his whole life. Letting people know, everyone else they're okay, but this is the guy that they fully believe in. Personally, this is who they stand for. It wasn't so much like, hey, you guys follow us. It was like, this is who I believe. This is what I'm saying. If you're feeling what we're saying, which they were, it's a lot of good applause for everyone speaking. That this is who you should be voting for.
And if you look at,
I think it was effective. Yeah.
You look at 2016, Bernie didn't do as well with older people.
I was pleasantly surprised. Yeah. It was mostly older crowd here, so especially I think a lot of events I've been to in Michigan were a lot of older people, volunteers are older. Yeah. So I think it's gonna be a different story this time for sure. Yeah.
And
I canvassed myself in Detroit, and I passed out flyers, and a lot of the older people are receptive. Pretty much everyone is receptive. Yeah.
And what I find interesting, the media keeps spinning that Joe Biden is the most electable here in Michigan and other places. Well, he's basically Hillary Clinton with different body parts, and she lost Michigan. So why is he more electable?
We're on the same page fully with that. I can go all day about how much I dislike Joe Biden, so I'm not even gonna. I mean, to be really short and sweet about it, the quote that they mentioned, both Nina and Cornel West mentioned it too. Nothing will fundamentally change, and no one's standard of living will change. When he said to his donors, his rich donors, if anyone were to vote for him or support him after that, they must be morally bankrupt or just, I don't want to say stupid, but that should disqualify him right then and there.
Seemed to have
that was the first question of the debate night. His first question was about that. He successfully curbed it, didn't even answer it. I hope it's brought up again because that should cancel him. That should be billboards of that.
By the way, it was the first question addressed to Joe Biden. What did you mean when you told Wall Street that you're going to fluff their pillows for 8 years? He basically totally went to a different topic. And, of course, the media said, thank you, Vice President, and didn't challenge him because that's the media. They also had a slight, I wouldn't call it a dig, but they did mention that while Bernie was doing this in the 70s, 80s, 90s, Elizabeth Warren was still a Republican. You hear that Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, they're not going to go after each other, blah, blah, blah. But what do you think is the differences for you between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren?
At first, I was on the side of, we shouldn't be have them fight each other. I was kind of more neutral about it. I can understand why some people were weary about her because of her not endorsing him the first time around. 'Cause that's your friend. You can leave your friend to hang and dry, like that. But
it just came out that the reason she basically kept him high and dry is she was hoping to be chosen as Hillary's vice president.
Right. So there was a lot of little things. It's a lot of little things like that. Her shakiness on Medicare for all. I think recently someone asked her, "Do you think Donald Trump is a racist?" After the squad going home comments, and she couldn't even answer that straight away. I'm like, like Nina mentioned about you need the three backbones: the wishbone, the jawbone, and a backbone. And I don't think she has the backbone. Lauren, she doesn't. I believe her heart's in the right place. She is a big advocate for income inequality, but she just doesn't have the courage to really fight for it. I don't think so.
And lastly, not about the campaign, but Detroit. To me, Detroit is like the symbol of the controlled demolition of the working class. We keep hearing about this booming economy. I don't really see a booming economy here. I see a lot of streets that look like they just got bombed.
Ain't no jobs here. Our public transportation is messed up. There's no... I have to work $10 an hour at a grocery store that's really far from my house and the suburbs because there's no jobs in the middle of the city, and you have to have a car to live here. Bernie talks about infrastructure all the time, rebuilding our trains and our subways. It's messed up. There's nothing. It's not booming here at all. No.
What's your name?
Dwayne Golston.
Thanks, Dwayne. Appreciate it. Hey, come on in. How you doing?
Great.
You're alive. So you're from Detroit?
I am.
Now, this message, because Bernie won the primary in 2016, obviously Hillary lost in the general election, but Michigan and Detroit is kind of like I was just saying, kind of ground zero for the demolition, I would say, of the working class.
Yes.
And you have a lot of these candidates, Kamala Harris wants to skim around the edges, a tax credit here. Elizabeth Warren seems to have a lot of plans. A lot of them are recycled Bernie plans. What to you about Bernie would really help Detroit specifically?
Probably the most important thing is that Bernie knows how to learn and grow, and he's been learning and growing since 2016 in terms of racism, in terms of ways to deal with reparations that make sense, which is massive reinvestment. And obviously, I'm not black, so I'm not presuming to say, but those sorts of things are really important. Also, it's the whole idea of change doesn't come from the top down, it comes from the bottom up, and that's empowering a whole lot of grassroots people, not just in terms of local elections, but in terms of things outside electoral strategy, in terms of environmental racism, in terms of the schools, in terms, and that's the other thing I mentioned, is his school plan is by far the best, not just getting rid of tuition and paying off student debt, but the public schools raising the teachers' wages so that they're able to really function and teach in a public system and improve everybody's outcomes from the very beginning.
And something that I hear him saying now that he didn't hear in 2016 was, yeah, everybody's got a plan. Elizabeth Warren has plans. Everybody could have a plan. But plans don't matter if the structure of America is a legalized auction.
Yes.
So if people don't confront that, like Warren, for example, talks about regulating that structure, but if the apple is rotten, you gotta go after that.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think your point about structure is critically important, because I was talking about structure in terms of the function of the campaign, but also the extra parts, like Bernie sent people out when there were going to be ICE raids through his campaign. He sent people out to picket on picket lines through his campaign. And that's really validating an inside-outside structure, which is the only way we're going to make change. And you do need to fundamentally understand that the system is rotten and the system needs to be changed if you're really going to be able to accomplish all these things.
And lastly, MSNBC tells me Bernie is not pro-women and that he makes their skin crawl. You're a woman.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Well, I think that Bernie was pro-choice in 1972. He is nothing but respectful. There were issues in his campaign in 2016. He addressed them with the whole crew clearly and calmly and appropriately. Three more things. His staff is predominantly women. The Medicare for All, the schools, the tuition-free, all of those are disproportionately going to benefit women, particularly women of color.
Do you know who she was saying in 1972 Bernie was pro-choice? Do you know who in 1974 who said, "I do not believe a woman has the sole role in deciding what to do with their body"? Do you know who said that?
Hillary Clinton?
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden. Okay, can you cut the Hillary Clinton? Sorry, please.
It wasn't you, Hillary, this time.
That's it. Okay, yeah, well, Joe Biden is a much more traditional Democrat, working class guy, white, lunch pail, and I disagree with his positions on the issues, and I disagree with the approach of his campaign, and that's why I'm working for Bernie.
What's your name?
Susan Steigerwalt.
Thank you, Susan. Appreciate it. So there's just some of it. Want to come on in? We're doing interviews, asking people, what do you think of the speech? Seems like Cornel West always brings down the House, but Danny Glover was kind of talking about the time for change is now, and Nina Turner also talking about you need somebody who's been saying and doing this for many, many years.
So what you want, what is it, the question in particular?
What do you think of what they were saying?
I think it was electrifying. I think they show courage
to speak on some of the topics that they were speaking on, and I really enjoy the way they address the African Americans without alienating other cultures, and how they structured their arguments based on, the suffering that African Americans go through, and how that same suffering we go through, other cultures go through in this same country. And he made a point about the black and white thing, how some issues ain't black and white. They're just human issues. Suffering is just a human issue. Pain, all of that, them human issues. So as being an African American, he pointed out some major issues that we have to get together dealing with our culture. And we have to, correct some things in our culture, politically, socially, and economically. At the same time, simultaneously, correcting the oppression of our government's culture that oppresses all people in this country, in America, especially black and brown and poor white people. So I think that was very dynamic.
And, Bernie has talked a lot about the racial wealth gap, not just the wealth gap, but the racial wealth gap. Obviously, these three are supporting Bernie. What do you think in general? Because it seems to me, this is my second campaign, you hear a lot of talk that's, we have plans for the African American community. A lot of people drop in before the primaries, and then they get to office, and it's like, ooh, we're going to focus elsewhere.
He covered some of those issues as well. And I got to say this historically, just to be correct, because he spoke on a lot of African Americans and the niggerism and the house niggerism, and how a lot of our leaders get into these social positions and they become house niggerized. They don't want to hold up to the true core issues that African Americans have to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
So kind of like they become part of the elitist system that also
is a global terrorist system. Is a global terrorist system. The thing about the African American is we've been dealing with it in our experience since we came here and before we left the continent of Africa. So socially, we know how to deal with that. Economically, we know how to deal with that. These are things that we've been raised up under, and I said raised because it was white people that was parenting us. So we was raised up under this, and this global system called white supremacy. Yeah, I would believe we would be the ones you would really want to talk to and how to deal with that and eradicate that. Because the experience is in us to teach the solutions in how to eradicate white supremacy. So you can see the cultural unity amongst people in this country. Because it's a compelling story in this country about the social human systems that we create in order to survive in this country. And that's cross-culture. That's cross-races. So I believe they hit some real pertinent issues, especially dealing with the systemic problem of African Americans, and when it comes to becoming house niggerized. That's a social issue. It's a systemic issue that African Americans go through. It's a real reality.
And lastly, when you look at Detroit, when you watch some of the channels, they say Detroit's booming, Detroit's coming back. Well, I see like 10 to 15 blocks downtown that they put a lot of money into. Maybe that's coming back. But when I look elsewhere, they're closing down GM factories. There's food deserts. There's areas that don't look so different than Baghdad. Is Detroit coming back, as we're told?
Well, just like any city or any place where it needs to be redeveloped, Detroit went through them same crises. So it's Detroit and what we're going through, gentrification, the housing bubble, all of them things is no different than other areas where it didn't happen. So here in Detroit, dealing with the people is conscience,
of what's going on, and the people is conscious on what we need to do. And I think that's more important, right? That the people are conscious on the problem and what needs to happen for this city. Because Detroit breeds diehard people. You know, we're very diehard about Detroit City. So the outstanding citizens that's been here for a long period of time, yeah, they're on the front line still fighting to keep this city. We don't want nobody to have this city, right? But we want to share the city, you know, like we always do. You know, we want to share, we want new people, you know, but we don't want the ones that's here to be shut out or to be ignored, you know, because that we have our issues here.
Well, lastly, obviously, therefore, they were here supporting Bernie Sanders. Do you have any...
Bernie? Yeah. I like Bernie Sanders. I think Bernie Sanders have a lot of innovating ideals. I think Bernie Sanders, as a politician, shows more honesty and authenticity in his issues and his campaign promises. I hold that he has issues that's really concerning change. What he's running on speaks to real change. So he would be a good candidate. I really hold that Bernie Sanders would be a real good candidate. But like everybody know, when you running for office is one thing. But once you become a sitting president, that's a whole different communication. That's a whole different conversation. And it's not one president who was running for office and became a sitting president who didn't contradict themselves in what they were saying when they was running for office. So some of those things you have to wait until, you know, until it just wash out in the water. You have to really be patient with politics and the things that these people promise they're going to do for the people. You have to see that.
Yeah, the one thing about him versus everybody else, he's been saying the same thing basically since the 70s. All these other people kind of have come on a little bit late.
That's true. Yeah. That's the authenticity about Bernie Sanders.
What's your name, sir?
Jermaine Carroll.
Thanks, man.
Unite Foundation.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, you're good. So I'm schwitzing, as you can see. It was pretty damn hot in here. Yeah, I'm in my. We had two meetings before this pertaining to the Flint water crisis, which I can't get into. But let's just say, wow, the meetings we had before this, wow. So we'll have more on that a little bit later. Sorry.
Behind the scenes, if you remember.
Oh, so if you remember, Ty and I, after the meetings we just did in Flint, we just did a video just for members, which we're going to upload tonight. Let's just say, if you're familiar with Status Quo, you might be a new subscriber. We broke a story last year about the state of Michigan cheating on the Flint water testing, which was pretty damn scandalous, if you ask me. And we've been following up on that. We knocked on 450 doors. We found that they were running the residents in Flint, running their water before taking lead samples, which is illegal. It flushes out the lead. Not to diminish that. That's a big story, but what we just got, woo! Huge. But getting back, so become a member. By the way, we are here in Detroit, just like we were here in Miami for the first debate, because of our members. So statusquo.com/join. If you're unfamiliar, you can become a member for as cheap as a cup of coffee. You can do $5 a month, $10 a month. We also have higher plans. And what that does is it gives us the consistent, keyword consistent funding to go out in the field and cover the stories the way we want to cover the stories. Let the pundits, let the out-of-touch jerk-offs on CNN, MSNBC, let them eat cake inside the debate building so they could circle jerk each other, excuse my French, so they could circle jerk each other about who's more electable, this and that. We're going to be outside with the people. We don't know for sure what's going on outside the debate. When we're out in the field, kind of things just kind of happen on the fly. We know that there's a big... Oh, we did get credentials, but not for the spin room. So CNN kind of like, CNN's like CNN's like they give you a ticket for a concert, and you go to the concert, and you're allowed to stand by the concession stands. So CNN gave us half a credential. Yeah, so basically, we got credentials for what they call Media Row, which is where all the corporate and some independent media outlets are. So that's where they set up shop. That's where they do their interviews, this and that. We'll check it out, but we really want to focus more on what's going on the ground. Because in my experience, and Ty's experience, most of the time it's really an alternative reality what's going on inside. Like at the DNC, it was all champagne and caviar inside, and outside, if you were there in Philadelphia for the 2016 DNC, the people of America, the youth, the older progressives were revolting against the corruption going on inside. And it's a similar story at a lot of these debates. You see inside a lot of the, interviewing pundits who are very, very out of touch, have no idea what the pulse of the actual people are, have no idea what people are actually struggling with, have no idea that people are choosing between groceries and medication. They're inside on CNN and MSNBC and in the pages of the New York Times pontificate about who will win the Midwest and who has more to lose in the debate. They look at debates and the campaign more as an ongoing sporting event, and they assign points to the candidates based on debate zingers or flops. We're not interested. We're going to be interviewing people. We're hoping to do some interviews tonight here in Detroit, so you got to monitor the YouTube channel. Don't expect YouTube to notify you either. So if you're not on our email list, sign up for Status Quo's email list. Go to statusquo.com. Enter your email. Once you hit the website, there's a little section for it, because we'll be sending out email blasts as we go live, because we can't rely on YouTube for that. But my thoughts here, let's keep it real. Bernie didn't do particularly well in 2016 among seniors, and he did well among millennial African Americans, but he didn't do so well among older African Americans. So having Nina Turner here, Danny Glover, who's an amazing actor and activist, as well as Cornel West. No wonder they don't have Cornel West on cable news that much, right? I'm not going to repeat the words because I'm a white dude, but a lot of strong speak and honest talk too. But it's just powerful, and I think what you got from the gentleman I just spoke to, a lot of voters, particularly black voters, and I'd love to know what Ty thinks, are cynical, and rightly cynical, because they've been fed a lot of bullshit from the government. They've been fed a lot of BS from politicians since the dawning of time. So when I asked him, what do you think about Bernie, he likes the things he stands for, but he's rightly cynical because, why am I talking about it? You could tell me about the cynicism and the black experience.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There hasn't really been. Yeah, can you see me? There hasn't really been a presidential candidate that has addressed black people. Even Barack Obama didn't address any specific black issues ever. So, regardless of what president was in office, we never been affected because we was already at the bottom of the towing pole. So whatever was going on up there never really affected us because everything that was legislation, everything that was passed was to keep us down anyway. So we always have felt. That's why for the longest time, I don't want to generalize all black people, but for myself, the first time I ever voted was for Barack Obama. Granted, I had a felony and I had to wait 7 years. But after that, I was so used to not voting, and I was so used to them BSing and not doing anything for us and still being in the shit. I just never voted. And then until I got my mind right and just really realized that people actually died for me to vote, actually. And so I do it. But yeah, they're cynical because they're still in the shit. Every president that said they're going to do something, you see them, they still got holes in on the grounds. The roads are messed up. There's no jobs. There's no. They're taking any community center or any resources that they've had. They've stripped out. But you can go to I was driving through Beverly Hills because I had some people visiting LA the other day. What's wrong?
You always tell me to look into the camera.
I'm not used to being in front of camera. So I was driving through Beverly Hills, and we were in Inglewood, and we were just wrapping around, and we were talking about all the potholes, and we go to Beverly Hills, it looks like everything just looks completely different. That's because they have the resources, and those things matter. What they do is, a lot of politicians, they look at the voting statistics, and they're like, oh, in this area, they're not going to vote that much, so we can just F them over, and that's how black people have been feeling the whole time. So we're completely skeptical. Because even, we got a black president, and even a black president didn't address any black-specific issues. You know what I mean? He addressed it, LBGT, issues, women's issues, but for some reason he didn't feel like that he needed to address black issues. And all those issues should have been addressed, but in addition to that, he should have addressed things with black people, especially in his first term when he had the House and the Senate. So that's why we're cynical, because the government has never addressed our issues.
And I'm actually curious to ask you, because like I'm taught as a white person, like don't say that word, and that's a bad word for white people to say. So when I hear Cornel saying it, and I see the audience just not even embrace it, but just like he's speaking to them, like this is how they feel. You know what I mean? Like, can you tell? I'm not trying to like be like, oh, my black cameraman, but like, can you kind of talk? No, but I'm saying I can't. You know, when you, hey, as a person, like I'm not gonna fake.
Well, what are you asking?
Like to you, what is when he says that? What is he saying to white people who don't understand what that means?
Okay. So what he's saying, and you know, I'm not in Cornel's head, but what I took from it.
But wouldn't that be a wonderful place?
I know, right? I'm not in his head, so I can't speak for him. But what I took from it is that the actual definition, and when other people try to articulate what that word nigga means, is that's what he's talking about. What they meant initially when they gave that word, how they subjugated us, and the origin of that word is specifically, he's saying they're trying to keep us there, and they manipulate us to keep us there. That's how I took it, and I think that's how everybody else took it as well, and that's why they responded the way that they responded, because what he's saying is they're trying to keep you ignorant, they're trying to keep you down, they're trying to keep you against your people, they're trying to keep you from progressing, and so he said niggerism, and because it is what it is. Like a lot of, like we say nigga, but it means something else for us. But when he say niggerism, he trying to take it back to this definition of what they meant when they gave it to us. You know, what the intention was then. You know what I mean? That's what I took from it. I ain't in his head, but I think that's what everybody else took from it. That's why I was able to respond to it.
And by the way, Cornel West, in terms of YouTube, is a demonetization machine. That guy opens his mouth, demonetized on YouTube. Anyway, how you doing, sir? You want to come in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cornel Williams.
Cornel West. Yeah.
Is that him?
Yeah.
Cornel Williams gave an excellent speech. You know, in fact, he should be the one running instead of the one who came as a candidate. I would vote for him.
Well, he's here for Bernie, so did he sway you to vote for Bernie by chance?
That he didn't do.
Okay.
Because emotions don't get problems solved. And what Cornel Williams is?
Cornel West, yeah.
Cornel West, what he did was he gave up some solutions to the problems. So yes, I will go with him instead of the emotions and stuff. Yes.
Bernie has some plans. You don't like his plans? Yeah, who do you like?
He was talking about the problems. He was just narrating all the racial problems and all this other stuff. We know that. We want some solutions.
Who got the solutions for you?
Who's got the solutions for you?
The guy that I just mentioned.
Cornel West. I'm saying the people running. You got Bernie, Biden, Kamala Harris. Who's the solution?
Right now, I'm still. I'm not really. I need to hear Obama's.
Joe Biden?
No, he doesn't necessarily support Joe Biden.
You want to hear who Obama supports?
Who he would? What's the word I'm trying to think?
Endorse. Well, respectfully, Detroit. Barack Obama was president for 8 years. It's not like Detroit was lifted into economic juggernaut. So, if Obama endorses someone,
Obama got the fuel sales for the electric cars, the contract to Detroit, and the city legislature sold the city out, and now China has the contract for fuel sales.
Electric cars.
That would have kept the automobile industry in Detroit. Obama tried to help Detroit, believe me, in many ways. He actually, look, the president, he did an outstanding job. I got a poster or email, and what it was a poster of Obama, right? And it said, "Has anyone seen this man? If so, would you please return him to the White House?" Did you ever see that poster? I loved it, man. I said, "Yeah, you're right about that. I wish he could have did 4 more years."
Well, I'll agree to disagree on that. But my last question, when you look at the media paints the economy as booming, right? The economy's booming nationwide. But when I'm in Detroit and places like Flint and other places, I see a lot of closed down storefronts. I see it we're not talking about new. I mean, they've been closed down for years.
Whole streets, homes are abandoned.
The reality
is this. There's always going to be people desperately struggling, the poor. There's always going to be poor. There's always going to be people in distress. You know, we can't solve all the problems. We can't solve all the world's problems. We can't solve it. We can't make a paradise. We don't have the capacity to take all the world's problems away. You see what I'm trying to say? In other words, there's always going to be those. That's a part of being. But what a country now, as far as a country goes, America, I love this country because a country is judged on the way it treats its poor.
Well, we don't treat our poor so hot.
Yes, we do.
No, we don't.
A lot better than you. Haven't been to where I've been.
You seen all the homeless people on the streets? It's expanding.
Have you? Hey, you should go where I've been and see what homeless people.
I'm sure you've been a lot of places.
Yes. I was in the Marines for 4.5 years. I did 6 months bad time. But bad time in the Marine Corps is good time because I was a bad boy.
What's your name?
In the Marines, Clark.
Clark? Nice to meet you, Clark. Thank you for service.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye. Oh, you want to come on? Woo! I don't want to get in a fight with at a senior home.
Anything from Detroit when he bailed out the big 3. How could you dare say that?
No. I was saying the Detroit's economy and cities like Detroit aren't exactly booming. The income inequality has exploded. Obama definitely deserves credit for the bailout, for sure. But what I was saying, he was talking about, I'm going to wait for the endorsement from Obama. But I mean, if you look at America, the income inequality in this country, particularly the racial disparity.
Because we have so many Jim Crow laws here. We have Jim Crow laws at our Department of Human Services. We have redlining with our car insurance. We have redlining with our mortgages. Everything here has Jim Crow laws. We have a policy that bans drug felons from getting food stamps for life. However, the child molester can eat, the rapist gets to eat, the murderer gets to eat. So it's strictly for black males because they are the ones who are prosecuted for drug felonies. We have been Jim Crow with our property taxes. You're charging me property taxes based on a fake value. My home's not worth $80,000, $90,000, yet still you charge me that for my property taxes. Then when I can't pay it, you turn around and foreclose on me. So it's just racist policies here in Detroit that have kept us down.
And by the way, they're filling up private prisons with black men over drugs, nonviolent crime, while not a banker.
You never committed because recently many have been exonerated from rape after they spent 20, 30 years. The state pays $36,000 a year to keep someone in prison.
Ooh, don't say that.
Yeah, $36,000. But you don't want to pay for schools. You don't want the kids to have toilet paper in the schools. We have to give them soap to wash their hands with. So where's that money going to?
What'd you think of what they were talking about today? Obviously, there for Senator Sanders.
I think that he's going to have a hard time, not with black voters, but with the rest of the country, because they're thinking that he's like a welfare person who's going to give away something that they believe that they own, which they don't. You know, all the tax dollars are supposed to be shared amongst the people, but unfortunately, we're subsidizing corporations like Walmart. We just gave money to Chrysler, millions and millions of dollars. The Illages, Dan Gilbert, he's a billionaire. So why am I, with my poor black ass, taking money out of my check to give to him so he can make more profit? That's crazy.
And by the polls, a lot of his policies now have majority support across race. Medicare for all, free public college, a Green New Deal.
Well, that's true, because you're telling me that you're going to pay for college for, I have $100 and something thousand in student loans. So you're telling me somebody runs across the border in Tijuana to San Diego, and I got to pay for them to go to college? But then you ruin my credit because I'm late a few days with my payment. That's crazier. I mean, some of the things that the Democrats are proposing are really nuts too. So we can't afford it. We have too many people on food stamps already because they've compressed the wages. I'm a union member. I believe that the corporations need to pay their workers. I believe that Walmart needs to pay their workers. Everyone that works there is on welfare. We're paying for their daycare. We're paying for food stamps for them to feed their family because they're only making $12 an hour. You can't survive in Michigan on $12 an hour, especially when you got $500 a month car insurance. So we're subsidizing corporations instead of building our infrastructure, putting money in our public schools. Our roads are crumbling, yet you let the Republican governor give money to build a bridge that we don't need. Right. So why are we spending money on a new bridge when our roads are crumbling, when our schools are crumbling? Flint doesn't have clean water. So make that make sense. That's ridiculous. None of that stuff should be going on. The money should be going where it's supposed to go.
And it's interesting you mentioned Walmart, because in the last 3 months of the campaign, the biggest donor to Bernie Sanders was actually Walmart workers, because he went to their shareholders meeting and said you got to pay them a living wage. Same thing with Amazon.
Well, they raised it to $12. Unfortunately, that's not enough. And when they're making, I did my MBA project on Walmart, when they're making billions of dollars off of our subsidized and their operating expenses, that's ridiculous. They need to pay their workers based on their profits, because that's who's making them, making them richer than they already are. So then we have public policy that forces women to go to work for them at a slave wage, and then they spend the money right back to them. So it's really crazy the way the economy has been set up over the last 30 years. I worked for UPS. I was a Teamster when I was in college. I made $9.50 an hour in 1987. So you telling me they're gonna pay me $9.25 in 2019? That's the minimum wage? I made that money 30 years ago.
You know, it's interesting too, because you were mentioning redlining and all this Jim Crow discrimination. So presidential candidates, they could all throw out 100 plans, but the systematic
but they won't be able to do it because federal supersedes state law. See, that's the problem. We don't have anybody with big enough kahunas in the White House to take care of all these little Jim Crow policies that the states are allowed to pass.
Well, if you look at all the candidates running, you don't think someone like Bernie, or name your other candidate, would actually go up against some of these powerful interests?
Bernie probably would.
But you're not sold on him?
I'm not, because I don't think he'll garnish enough votes, because we're only 15% of the population. So if every black person in America voted for him, he still probably wouldn't make it. He's got to get the whites on his team, because there's a lot of poor white people in this country. Trust and believe me.
It's funny you say.
I know it, but they are.
It's funny you say this, because MSNBC and CNN aren't educating people.
They need to look at their bank accounts. They need to see if they have insurance, if they have a pension. They don't have anything. They're struggling like every black person.
In the polls, Bernie does best among the people you just mentioned, white people without college degrees. But putting that aside,
I can't tell because they voted for Trump, and now they
were up against Hillary, so maybe that's why they voted for.
Their better option would have been Hillary.
That's fine. Oh yeah, it would have been. She's talking about instead of Trump.
Yeah.
Lastly, I want to know because
He's cutting 3.4 million of them off of food stamps, starting, I believe, in January or maybe in the fall.
no, we got to get rid of him. The question is who? Because if you
Where does that okay, for that money that we're not spending to feed the families, where is that money going?
Trump's tax cuts, war, real estate developers, pharmaceutical executives, fossil fuel executives. I could go on.
Why is it going in their pockets?
This isn't a country, ma'am. This is a corporation. The United Corporations of America. Thank you very much.
So that's got to stop, because I don't want my money going into the illegals and the billionaires of America.
But it's been going there for 30, 40 years. So
Yeah, it has, but something's got to give, because we're at the precipice now. We're at the point of do or die, because if you continue to cut and cut and cut and cut and cut and cut, I think we're going to have a revolution here shortly.
you're actually describing what Chris Hedges says, which is we're on the late stage capitalism, and the end result is a revolution.
Yeah, we're going to have that. It seems that that's what's going to have to happen.
What's your name?
My name is Kimberly.
Thank you, Kimberly. Appreciate it.
Amazing.
Nice talking to you.
Wonderful woman. Enjoy Detroit, right on the shirt. So that's the pulse here. And unlike the other media, by the way, there was no news media here. There was no national media here. As often is the case, Status Quo was the only news network here. We're often the last one standing too, and we do that because we want to actually. There is a cognitive dissonance in this country because the corporate media, and frankly, some of our former friends in the independent media, they show an alternate reality. They think the most important thing is like Trump's tweets. I know Trump tweeted something racist about Elijah Cummings. I'm not saying that doesn't matter, but like we want to show you this kind of stuff, because this kind of stuff is the real pulse of what's going on. And the things that Kimberly was talking about and other people we spoke to, that's what's really going on. I don't agree with everything people I interview say. Sometimes I get more combative, not particularly in a senior citizen's home, but we want to show you all this. So again, we're going to be here covering the debate. If you're watching and you're new to us, press the subscribe button. Also, when you press the subscribe button, make sure you click the bell for all notifications. More importantly, my direct pledge to you, my direct plea to you, sign up, statusquo.com/join. Become a member. You can become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. We've been going for over a year, but YouTube has kind of been keeping us low in their feed, so some of you might not have even seen us before. So we go out in the field, we cover real stories of real struggle, real corruption, real injustice. We just had a meeting that would blow your fucking mind regarding the Flint water crisis. We've been staying on that story. So we could only grow as far as you take us. Ty and I would like to hit the campaign trail and keep covering the campaign. Not who's up and who's down, but like interviewing real people, covering real stories going on in local communities. We're trying to book some interviews for tonight and the rest of the week so we can cover actual stuff among activists and people on the ground rather than, feed to you the polls and the horse race and best debate zingers and all that. So if you're not a member yet, statusquo.com/join. Become a member now. We'll probably be live again later. Let me see if the guy got back to me. Not yet, but we're always on the fly trying to book interviews. So we might have some stuff later. If not, we'll definitely be live tomorrow. And again, statusquo.com/join.